Alright, today I'm reviewing my Ibanez RG655 Prestige from 2013, and as you can see, I've modified it since buying it with Bare Knuckle Pickups Aftermaths. This is my guitar, I own it, I'm the first owner, and I've done all the modifications, so all of this is my fault. I love this guitar and I've kept it through the years. However, you might be asking, how come this isn't featured on my channel more? And there is one big reason why I don't play it and use it more. But it's not really anything bad. Spoiler alert, it has to do with the neck. Also, by the way, I'm not sponsored by any of the brands shown in this video. I'm not in any touring bands right now. I'm not a virtuoso at guitar. I try, but I'm okay. I'm currently doing the casual online music thing, so you can check me out here on YouTube, on streaming services like Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Music, all that stuff. But yeah, I'm just some guy online who clearly likes guitars. So let's jump right into it, and don't forget to use the timestamps to find what you're looking for. So some background on this guitar here. I got it as my very first Prestige. Yes, this is the first one. I've been playing standard level Ibanez before. I was playing an S470. That thing was pretty cool. It was kind of a bummer though, how it only had 22 frets. And you know, this was 10 years ago, so I really wanted to shred and play up top. I still kind of do, but I really wanted to then. So I got this thing, it had the tone zone, the Air Norton. And those sounded pretty good. I think if I got this guitar today, brand new, and it had those pickups, I'd probably keep them. Especially in the day and age where I have all these plugins, I can just switch up my guitar sound completely pretty easily. But I was really into active pickups back then, and I still like actives now too, but I was really into the EMGs back then. But I wanted to try out the EMG 57 and the 66, so sometime after getting it, I installed those. And I was also inspired by Paul Gilbert too. He has the volume knob, just the one volume knob on the bottom. So I went ahead and I did that. I took out the tone knob because I basically never used the tone knob. I moved the volume knob down. Also, my technique honestly was worse back then. So my playing, I would be hitting the volume sometimes. In recent years, I have improved my technique and I do keep the volume knob closer to the bridge in the original position on other guitars. But that's why I did that, just to simplify. And I also changed the switch to a three-way switch. There's nothing wrong with the split tones in these pickups or in the stock pickups or anything like that, but I find personally I'm the most creative when I just have the three-way switch with the neck, the both of them, and then the bridge. So I put in the EMGs, the 57, the 66. They sounded good. I was using this guitar for leads. And then you fast forward to a few years ago, I decided to basically put in the bare knuckle pickups. I wanted to give them a try in this guitar. So I got the Aftermaths. They sound pretty good. We'll talk about sound a bit later. But man, this thing sounds sick. So more in background, what have I used this guitar on? Well, I got this guitar around the tail end. I was playing in bands, so this has been used in a few band practices. Of course, I've used it for recording stuff for YouTube. Specifically, I used it a lot on my Gravity Beetle cover. And interestingly enough, that was the last cover I used a real amp on. I was using the Engel Powerball Mark I. It was kind of a challenge to get that thing to sound good, but this definitely helped. This was also used in a recording studio because my vocalist at the time when I had got this, he had access to a recording studio, so I recorded for one of his projects. And so yeah, besides that, I've used it just for countless nights of practice by the desk. So most of the damage on this guitar, you can kind of see there's some chips, and down here too. That was all caused from the band practice and then just years of accidentally bumping the desk, which strangely I've only done with this guitar, so I can't explain that. Of course, there's the playing marks, the scratch marks on the pickguard you can kind of see. And that's just from playing it. I have been working on my picking technique again, trying to get the fingers in, but they come out and they scratch the pickguard. That's what the pickguard's for. So speaking of playing it, let's talk about the playability and the feel. So this guitar feels like it's the perfect weight. It's got the basswood body, which if you believe in tone wood, I think it sounds pretty good. It's nicely balanced with that, plus the weight of the trem system. So it sits pretty nicely when it's on a strap. Playing it, it does feel pretty much like any Prestige RG does, although for some reason the forearm contour, it feels like it's more sudden as opposed to the RGs I've gotten in recent times. Although this light makes it look pretty sudden, this one feels more gradual against the forearm. So I don't know if they've changed the design slightly over the years or if this is just a special like one-off the guy working during the day just accidentally sanded it down more harshly. I don't know. But it's not terrible. You maybe notice it if you've played a lot of RGs or a lot of guitars with this shape, and then you forget about it in like a second. I guess it's worth mentioning because this has a pickguard, and there are a lot of RGs that don't have a pickguard. You can feel it a little bit when you're like palm muting, doing your picking and stuff. It's not a big deal. It's not a deal killer, but if you absolutely hate the slight feel of a pickguard, it is worth mentioning. Moving on to the neck, it's got the Rosewood fretboard and it has the nickel silver frets, and it feels like you think it would. The Rosewood has just enough smoothness but just enough friction to it. The nickel silver frets, they feel like every other guitar with them does. The fretwork itself is pretty good. There's no sharp edges or anything like that. So playing this guitar, it won't feel as smooth and indestructible as stainless steel frets and an ebony fretboard. But if you are used to that and you switch to this, it only takes just a little bit of playing to get used to this. So if you absolutely have to have the stainless steel and the ebony, then maybe this would be annoying every time you pick it up, maybe. But I prefer the steel and the ebony, and I'm perfectly fine with this. After all, these guitars, no matter what wood they're made of or the frets they have, they're just tools for the trade. We can use them to make music. So if you find something that works for you, power to you. And this works just fine. It also is kind of nice to have a different playing experience too. Switching from the super smooth feel to something with a little bit more friction and resistance. It is a different playing experience. And I find the more I'm switching between guitars, the more I find myself inspired to write different things, to come up with other music, other songs. But maybe that's just me. Of course, because the frets aren't stainless steel, this will need refretting. It does kind of help that I switch between guitars, so I haven't had to refret this yet. I distribute the playing wear, but I have had to go ahead and re-level the frets. And when I do eventually get this refretted, I am going to go for the stainless steel frets. Now, as I mentioned in the intro to this video, there's one big reason why I don't play this guitar more than I do, why I don't use it more, because this thing is awesome. It plays fast, incredibly fast. It looks kind of cool in my opinion. It's a good weight. It sounds amazing, especially with these pickups. And the reason is because the neck is just ultra thin. This is the thinnest neck guitar I have. It's tied with the J Custom I have for thinnest neck. And the problem with that, you might be asking, is that really a problem? You're an Ibanez fan, what gives? And as I've gotten older, it actually fatigues my hand. Of course, in theory, with perfect playing technique and relaxing my hand perfectly, that shouldn't happen, but reality is you do feel a bit of adrenaline when you play. You do tense up a little bit, and I have been working on fixing that. I've been working on relaxing my hand when I play, both the picking wrist and the fretting hand, but it still does happen, which is too bad, but it's not bad enough to never use this guitar. I still practice on this every now and then, and I still record with it when I really need that sound. There is one other issue with this guitar, and I'm not sure if it's a problem with the guitar or if it's because of the pickups or some combination of the both of them, but I notice when playing this guitar, whenever it goes slightly out of tune, because when you play a guitar and you play it a lot and you play it hard, it does go out of tune. Guitars go out of tune. Who would have thought? But when that happens, this guitar is really sensitive to that. And maybe it's just a feeling, maybe it's just me, but I notice when it does go slightly out of tune, it sounds significantly not as good. Whereas some guitars, they go a little bit out of tune, but it still sounds kind of okay. You should tune anyway. Pro tip. With this guitar, especially when you're playing chords and stuff, when it starts to fall out of tune, it really goes. Although that being said, this guitar does hold its tuning better than mid-range guitars and a lot of guitars that are priced lower than this. The only exception so far has been the RG655 Genesis that I got. That guitar new costs less than this cost new, and that guitar plays just as well as this. A bit more on the thin neck. Longtime viewers of the channel might remember I did a review on an RGD that I used to have, and I ended up selling it because that neck was uncomfortable for my hand. And the difference between that guitar and me selling it and this guitar and me keeping it is because the neck profile, it's still that Ibanez Prestige 6-string neck profile, which I really like. It's just, I don't know, it feels like it's a 0.5 millimeter thinner somehow or something. So talking more about the modifications, you'll see I don't have the trem bar in this, and that's because I've blocked the bridge. I just taped some guitar picks together and I stuck them in there, and it works well enough. It did improve stability a little bit. Of course, the edge bridge is pretty stable, so I'm not knocking the bridge by any means. And one other fun modification I did. I don't know why I did this. I just ordered a decal from someone, and I got this quote from Catcher in the Rye. It's just for fun. There's no hidden message or anything. But yeah, blocking the bridge, I do prefer a trem system that is blocked. I do like fixed bridges too. But with this, not only do you get the locking nut, so of course your strings can't bind in the nut if the nut is locked. But I do like the feel of playing against this bridge, or floating bridges in general, like the Floyd Rose, the Ibanez Edge, the Low Pro Edge. I just like how it feels against my hand. So how has this guitar held up? Well, of course, there is some playing wear, as I've shown you, and there are the body dents, as I've shown you too. I think they add character. But the body and the neck have held strong. I haven't had to adjust anything or change out the neck. Nothing's broken there. And I find I don't have to set up this guitar too often. Usually with guitars, I have to set them up twice a year, once in the winter, once in the summer. With this guitar, I only have to set it up once every other year. And I'm not sure why. It just seems to hold its setup pretty well, even compared to other RGs that I've blocked the bridge of. Unfortunately, I can't comment on the wiring. You can see I've ripped out the wiring completely. I've gutted this guitar multiple times. First to put in the EMGs, and you know, the active pickups, when you switch from passive to active, you need to have different potentiometers, different wiring, different output jack. And then of course I switched it back to passives because the Bare Knuckle Aftermaths, they're passive. And so the wires in this now are just a Frankenstein of whatever I had laying around. And whatever potentiometers I had laying around. I think this might be the original volume, but I'm not 100% sure. Otherwise, I did level down the frets a bit just to get rid of some of the divoting. So those will have to be refretted soon if I start playing this a lot more. All right, so let's start talking about the sound. This guitar sounded good in stock form. The Tone Zone and the Air Norton and the bridge and neck respectively sounded like you would think they would. It's the typical Ibanez Prestige, the basswood body, the DiMarzio pickups. So those were good. Maybe not for ultra modern heavy metal, but for like shreddy fusion stuff, those were perfect. Not saying you can't do modern metal with the Tone Zone and things like that. A lot of it is amp settings or plug-in settings. The MG57 and 66 kind of sounded a bit like the stock pickups, but a bit more bright and clear, just a little bit. So those were nice. But it was kind of annoying thinking, oh, the battery, which I'd put into the Pickguard, when I have to change that, I have to rip this whole thing apart. So eventually I was like, you know what, heck, let's just go with the Bare Knuckle, the Aftermaths. And so they have a pretty nice modern sound. Yes, it chugs. Yes, it can gent. But it's also very good for rock. It's good for metal. Surprisingly, it's pretty good for classic rock. You get a bright sound for that. Of course, the cleans are really good too. As I mentioned with these pickups, you can really hear when it goes out of tune, especially because if you record a lot and you're used to hearing a guitar that is in tune, then you notice, oh, that's not quite in tune. But the guitar is pretty robust. I don't think it'll matter as much to general audiences if you're playing live or something. But if you're into recording a lot and you need things in tune, just keep that in mind. Alright, it's a few days later, the footage corrupted, so I'm shooting this part again. You might be asking, would I recommend this guitar? And of course, because I've kept it all these years, I would be inclined to say yes. But would I recommend it for you? Well, that's a good question. If you like thinner necks, you know, a more shreddy guitar, and your playing technique is a bit more relaxed, then yes, this would be an excellent guitar to grab, modify if you want to. It's the quintessential Ibanez experience, the thin neck, the super strat body. You really can't go wrong. Even if you prefer the ebony fretboard and the stainless steel frets over what this has, this still sounds good enough and plays well enough that you can overlook that, especially if you can find one of these in good condition and for a good price. Of course, if you're looking to do a bit more riffing, maybe less shredding, this is still a good option, but maybe something with a bit more meat on the neck might be a bit more comfortable. Not saying you can't riff on this or anything, but maybe something like an LTD or ESP, a Solar, something else. Might be slightly more comfortable, you know, just have a little bit more of the neck to grab onto. But if you prefer riffing, again, with a thinner neck and really just thumb behind the neck style, and you have a more relaxed technique, then yeah, this would do just fine. And yeah, more recent Prestiges, they also have a thin neck, but it doesn't feel quite as thin when you're playing on one of these versus this one. I'm not 100% sure why, but this one I can play much longer. I can play it all day. This one I need to think about how hard I'm gripping the neck and just having a relaxed hand. I should be having a relaxed hand anyway. In theory, in a perfect world, I should be working on my technique, and I have been. It's been getting better. But something about the more modern Prestiges, the design feels slightly more perfected on both the neck and the forearm carveaway. But this is still a fantastic guitar, and compared to the guitar I was just holding, this one is a lot less money. So am I going to use this guitar in more videos? Well, it depends, because this thing sounds pretty good. It sounds great. And I do like the pickguard look too. It's nice having an RG with a pickguard that doesn't have like an 80s color. I do love my RG550 to death. It's pretty awesome. I just got it. It's the Genesis one. And that has the black pickguard too, and I love the look. But I do like the finish on this one too. It's that black with the sparkle, the galaxy black. And I don't know, I prefer the ebony fretboards, but something how this rosewood fretboard catches the light, I like the look of it. So who knows, maybe I'll start featuring this more. Maybe I'll use it on select songs where I think the tones will work the best, especially as my technique improves. So there you have it. Do you have any questions or comments about this guitar? Did I answer your questions? Leave your comments down below. You know this is YouTube. I have to say the YouTube thing, so be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video, print out every frame and mail it. And as always, peace.